In the far reaches of the galaxy, where stars shone like scattered diamonds on a dark cloth, humanity had grown in ways no other species could imagine. For centuries, humans had explored, traded, and formed alliances. They built cities that floated, above planets, colonies in uninhabitable worlds, and ships that could cross entire star systems in months. They were admired for their creativity, resilience, and kindness. Other species whispered about humans, saying they were unpredictable, sometimes foolishly brave, sometimes painfully patient. But the truth was far deeper. Humans had a strength that no one had seen before. The galaxy often underestimated humanity. Many species saw humans as small, fragile, and easily threatened. Humans were not physically the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced at all times. Yet they had something far more dangerous. They had patience. They forgave mistakes. They tolerated insults. They endured attacks without striking back immediately. Humans had learned that violence was easy, but restraint was rare. For generations, they lived by this principle, even when other civilizations tried to provoke them. But there was a warning, one that was whispered in dark corners of the universe, one that every intelligent species ignored at their own risk. The elders of older civilizations, the ones who had witnessed countless wars and the rise and fall of empires, said this: "Do not make humans angry. Do not mistake their patience for weakness. Do not awaken the fire that sleeps in their hearts. Because when humans finally lose control, nothing will survive to tell the tale." Many laughed at this warning. "Humans are soft," the Zerth said, "a proud and cruel species known for their arrogance. They will complain, they will negotiate, and then they will forget. Their anger will be nothing but a passing storm." They did not know the truth, and then came the day the galaxy would never forget. The humans had always tried to be fair. When the Zerth first raided a minor human colony, stealing cargo and destroying transport ships, humans did not retaliate. They sent messages of peace, offering reparations, offering dialogue. The Zerth laughed. They mocked human attempts to negotiate. They thought humanity's patience was a weakness to exploit. But humans were not naive. Behind the calm words and the polite messages, a quiet determination was growing. Leaders on Earth and in the colonies began to speak of justice. Not vengeance, not cruelty, but justice for those who had been wronged. Every lost life, every destroyed home, every innocent child harmed by the Zerth became a story that fueled the growing storm of human resolve. And yet, for all their strength and intelligence, humans still hoped for peace. They still tried to avoid war. They still extended hands of friendship to their enemies. But the Zerth continued to push, ignoring every warning, every treaty, every attempt to find common ground. The galaxy watched as tensions grew. Ships patrolled, quiet sectors. Scouts reported suspicious activity. Diplomats whispered in tense corridors. And through it all, humans remained calm, almost frighteningly calm, as if they knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. It was only a matter of time before that calm would break. It was only a matter of time before the galaxy would see what humans were truly capable of when pushed too far. The Elder's words echoed across the stars. "Do not anger the humans. Do not awaken the fire that sleeps within them. Because when it burns, no one will survive." And the Zerth, proud and foolish, were about to find out the Zerth had always been proud. They believed in strength above all else, in fear as a tool, and in cruelty as a method of control. Where humans built cities that shone with light and hope, the Zerth built empires of oppression and towers of cold metal. Their leaders thought patience was foolish, forgiveness was weak, and mercy was meaningless. And when it came to humans, they saw an easy target. A civilization that smiled too much, trusted too easily, and forgave too often. At first, the attacks were small. A freighter ambushed in an unpatrolled sector. A supply convoy destroyed near a mining world. The humans responded carefully, sending envoys to negotiate, offering compensation, and warning the Zerth that continued aggression would not go unanswered. The Zerth laughed at these attempts, believing it was a sign of weakness. "These humans do not understand power," they boasted to each other. "They are soft, weak, and full of mercy. Soon, we will teach them their place. And then came Elysia. Elysia was a human colony unlike any other. It was a planet of beauty, with glass domes that protected thriving gardens, schools filled with curious children, and cities built with care and creativity. Humans had invested their hearts into Elysia. Families lived there for generations, raising children with stories of hope and exploration. It was a symbol of humanity's achievements, a shining light in the dark cold of space. The Zerth attacked without warning. Fleets appeared in orbit, dark and ominous, blotting out the sun. They struck swiftly, obliterating defensive satellites, disabling ships, and bombarding the cities below. Panic spread. Families ran, children screamed, and alarms blared across every dome. The humans fought valiantly, but the Zerth were ruthless and prepared. They did not negotiate. They did not hesitate. They destroyed everything in their path. When the smoke cleared, Elysia was gone. The cities were reduced to rubble, the gardens burned to ash, and millions of human lives had been lost in an instant. The screams of those who had survived haunted the survivors forever. The Zerth left no one alive to carry the memory. They wanted the humans to remember the devastation, but not the faces of those they had killed. The galaxy watched in silence. Other species whispered of the atrocity, but none dared intervene. Many were afraid of angering the Zerth. Many thought humanity would respond with fury. But they were wrong. For the first time in centuries, humans were truly angry, but they did not show it immediately. There were no immediate strikes, no hasty decisions. Instead, the humans mourned. They held ceremonies on other worlds, lighting candles in memory of the millions lost. Leaders gathered in council chambers across the stars, speaking quietly but with intensity, plotting a response that would not be reckless, but would not be forgiving either. The survivors of Elysia, their faces pale and eyes hollow from grief, whispered among themselves, "They took everything from us. They destroyed our home. They will pay. We will make them pay." And humanity began to prepare. They studied the Zerth, traced their fleets, learned their strengths and weaknesses, and formulated a plan unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. This was not vengeance born of impulse. It was strategy born of sorrow, of loss, and of righteous anger. The galaxy, still unaware, underestimated humanity once again. They thought humans were soft, forgiving, and unable to unleash true destruction. They were about to learn a truth that no one would ever forget. When humans were pushed beyond their limits, when their patience was broken, they became unstoppable. The Zerth had made the first mistake. They had awakened the fire within humanity, and that fire was about to spread across the stars like a storm that no one could escape. After the attack on Elysia, the galaxy waited for humanity's response. Other species held their breath, certain that the humans would strike back immediately. But the humans did not. They did not scream. They did not rush to war. They retreated into silence, a silence that was heavier than the void between stars. Across human space, fleets gathered in secret. Shipyards worked day and night, building vessels designed not just for defense but for the ultimate confrontation. Weapons of incredible power were prepared, systems that could disable entire fleets in seconds. Scientists and engineers worked tirelessly, pushing human technology to new heights. Every ship carried the names of lost colonies, of families and children who had perished. Humanity was not angry yet. They were mourning. They were calculating. They were preparing. On Earth, leaders met in the Grand Council chambers. Their faces were pale, eyes tired from sleepless nights. They spoke in quiet tones, yet every word was sharp with resolve. There were no threats, no shouts, no promises of revenge. Only one decision was made, spoken calmly but with authority. The Zerth would cease to exist. This decision was not made out of cruelty. Humans had not wanted war. They had wanted peace. But when peace was destroyed, when children were killed and families torn apart, there was no choice left. And humans, they understood, were precise. When they acted, it would be absolute. The galaxy, however, did not understand. Rumors spread, warnings were whispered, but most dismissed them. Humans are patient, some said. They will forgive eventually. They cannot hold such hatred forever. But the truth was that humans could, and they would, wait for the perfect moment. They could endure betrayal and loss, but their patience had limits. And when those limits were reached, nothing could stop them. The Zirth, foolish and proud, did not prepare for this. They celebrated their victory, mocking the humans who had survived Elysia, calling them cowards and weaklings. They thought humanity's calm meant fear, but they were wrong. That calm was not fear. It was the quiet before a storm that would sweep across the stars. Meanwhile, human families who had survived the attacks mourned in silence. They lit candles on distant moons, telling stories of lost children, of the laughter that had once filled Elysia, of dreams turned to ash. These stories traveled across the colonies, uniting humans in grief and resolve. Each person, from the youngest child to the oldest veteran, carried the memory of loss. Each heartbeat became part of a growing determination, a quiet but unstoppable force. As the fleets moved into formation, as weapons were primed and strategies finalized, humans felt a deep, almost sacred duty. They were not just fighting for revenge, they were fighting to ensure that no one would ever suffer like Elysia again. They were fighting to show the galaxy the cost of underestimating humanity, and so the galaxy waited, not knowing what was coming. Some species laughed at the humans' silence, others feared it, but none could guess the depth of human resolve. Across the stars, the Zirth remained blind to the danger they had awakened. They still believed in their strength, their cunning, and their cruelty. They did not yet understand that they had sown the seeds of their own destruction. In the quiet of space, humans prepared. They mourned, they calculated, and in the depths of their hearts, they knew that when the time came, their actions would be swift, precise, and final. The fire within them had begun to burn, a fire that would not be quenched until the Zirth were no more. The galaxy would soon see the truth. Human patience was not weakness, it was power. And when humanity decided to act, the universe itself would tremble. When the humans finally moved, the galaxy did not know what hit it. For centuries, humans had been patient, building, exploring, negotiating, forgiving. And now, when patience had reached its limit, they became a force beyond comprehension. Entire fleets emerged from hidden sectors, their engines glowing like molten metal, their hulls scarred with the names of the fallen. Each ship was more than a vessel. It was a promise, a memory of lost lives, a warning that the humans had grown angry. The Zirth noticed the human fleets too late. Messages were sent, warnings shouted across the void, but the humans did not answer. They moved as one, silent and relentless, through asteroid belts and star clusters toward the heart of the Zirth Empire. Their formations were perfect, their coordination flawless. Every ship, every weapon, every strategy had been calculated to maximize efficiency and minimize error. The galaxy held its breath. Other species watched, afraid and in awe, as human fleets swept past star systems that had long believed they were safe from human wrath. For the first time, the universe saw humans not as explorers or diplomats, but as soldiers of precision and power. On board the flagship of the human fleet, Commander Alara stood at the observation deck, her eyes fixed on the distant Zirth homeworld. She felt the weight of every lost life, the children of Elysia, the families of outlying colonies, the millions who had perished because of the Zirth's cruelty. She did not smile. She did not shout. She felt only resolve. Every pulse of energy in her fleet was fueled by remembrance, by grief, and by righteous fury. The Zirth scrambled their forces, sending waves of ships to intercept, believing they could resist the human advance. But the humans were faster, smarter, and prepared for every tactic the Zirth could throw at them. Ships were destroyed before they could fire, fleets disbanded before they could regroup. Every strike from the humans was precise, aimed at crippling the enemy, not wasting effort on delay. World after world fell. The Zirth colonies, once proud and sprawling, were reduced to smoldering ashes. The humans moved methodically, leaving no opportunity for the Zerth to rebuild, no chance to escape. And yet, even in the midst of destruction, humans showed a rare restraint. They struck at those who caused suffering, avoiding collateral damage wherever possible. It was not cruelty that drove them. It was justice. The Zerth tried to call for reinforcements, sending pleas for aid to allied species, but fear had spread too far. The galaxy had learned from humanity's silence. Angered humans were unstoppable. No ally dared intervene. The Zerth were left to face the storm alone. On each planet the humans passed, survivors from earlier Zerth raids were rescued. Families were reunited, wounded healed, and colonies rebuilt. Humans did not celebrate their victories with fanfare. They honored the memory of what was lost and pressed forward with a grim determination. Their ships glided through space like shadows of judgment, bringing hope to some, fear to others, and death to those who had brought suffering. The Zerth homeworld finally came into view, a planet of steel towers and dark skies, proud and defiant. The humans paused for only a moment, as if to remember why they were here, before moving into final formation. Every weapon aimed, every system ready. This was not a battle of anger. It was a culmination of centuries of patience, of suffering, and of determination. Commander Alara whispered softly to herself, a quiet vow carried across the fleet. For Elysia, for every life taken, you wanted to see our patience. Now you will see our justice. The march of steel was nearly complete. The storm was about to break, and the galaxy would never forget the day humans finally showed the true weight of their wrath. The Zerth homeworld glowed ominously in the distance, its metal towers piercing the dark skies like sharpened blades. From orbit, the humans could see the sprawling cities. The fleets gathered in desperate defense and the arrogance of a species that thought themselves invincible. The Zerth had believed humanity was weak, that their patience would last forever. They had been wrong. Human ships advanced in perfect formation, engines burning like rivers of light, weapon systems powered up, targeting arrays synchronized with flawless precision. Every human in the fleet knew the cost of delay, the cost of hesitation. Each pilot, each soldier, each officer carried the memory of Elysia, the screams of the innocents and the faces of the millions who had perished. They were not seeking vengeance for themselves. They were seeking justice for the fallen. The Zerth scrambled their defenses. Warlords barked orders, fleets moved into formation, and planetary shields rose to full power. They launched volleys of missiles, laser storms, and fighter swarms. For a moment the battle seemed balanced, the Zerth's ferocity matched by human discipline. But the humans had waited. They had studied the Zerth, learned every weakness, every blind spot. Every attack was calculated to dismantle their pride, piece by piece. The flagship of the human fleet, the Aegis, moved to the forefront. Commander Alara stood at the helm, calm and resolute. Her eyes scanned the battlefield, noting every movement, anticipating every strike. She spoke once, her voice soft but carrying across the bridge. Begin the purge. Leave nothing that can hurt again. And so the human assault began. Precision strikes tore through Zerth warships before they could fire. Planetary shields faltered under the weight of sustained bombardment. The skies above the Zerth capital glowed red as weapon after weapon found its mark. The humans did not scream or rage. They acted like the inevitability of nature itself. Storms came and went, but the humans' strike was no accident. It was judgment. The Zerth begged for mercy, sending envoys into orbit, pleading with humans to halt their assault. We surrender. We yield. Do not destroy us, they cried. But humanity remembered Elysia. They remembered the children. They remembered every city that had burned, every life that had been stolen. There could be no forgiveness this time, no compromise. The battle intensified. Zerth fighter swarms crashed into human vessels. Planetary defenses fired with desperate fury. And yet the humans pressed on, unyielding. One by one, the towers and cities of the Zerth homeworld fell. Their fleets dissolved like sand in a storm. Their armies were annihilated. Every desperate attempt at resistance only sped their downfall. From orbit, Commander Alara watched as the planet below burned. She did not smile. She did not cheer. She simply whispered the names of those lost. Elysia, Verdun, Kyros. Every strike was a vow kept, every explosion a promise fulfilled. The humans had not wanted this war. They had wanted peace. But peace had been destroyed, and now the galaxy saw the cost of breaking it. By the time the final shield generator fell, the Zerth were gone. Not a single warship remained intact. Not one tower stood. The homeworld, once proud and cruel, was reduced to molten glass and smoldering ruin. The humans did not celebrate. They observed a moment of silence honoring the memory of those who had suffered, and then they began the careful work of ensuring no Zerth could ever rise again. The last words spoken by the human fleet commander were simple, cold, and final. You wanted to see our anger. Now you will see the end of it. The galaxy, watching from afar, trembled. Never before had a species been so patient, so restrained, and yet so utterly unstoppable when pushed beyond its limits. Humanity had not only won, they had made a statement that would echo across the stars for all time. And the Zyrth, they had ceased to exist. The fires of the Zyrth homeworld had long since faded into glowing embers, but the memory of the destruction lingered in the cold void of space. The galaxy watched in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what had just happened. Entire fleets and worlds of the Zerth were gone, erased from existence by humans who had been pushed to the edge of their patience. Ships from distant systems hovered in orbit, observing the human fleets as if witnessing a force of nature itself. Yet, despite the enormity of their victory, humanity did not celebrate. There were no parades, no cheers, no songs of triumph. On every human vessel, across every colony, there was only quiet, a quiet filled with grief, remembrance, and a solemn understanding of the cost. Humans had always been explorers, builders, and protectors. They had not wanted to bring death across the stars. But when Elysia was burned, when millions of innocent lives were taken, they had been left no choice. Commander, Alara walked through the corridors of the Aegis looking at her crew. Faces were pale, eyes haunted by what they had seen. They had not fought for glory. They had fought for justice, for those who could not fight for themselves. In the silence, she felt a weight that was heavier than any weapon they had unleashed. Humanity had become unstoppable, yes, but at what cost? Across the galaxy, reactions were varied. Some races trembled, realizing that humans were not just capable of great creation but of unimaginable destruction. Empires that had once mocked humanity now reconsidered every insult, every slight, every betrayal. And yet others whispered, fearfully, if humans could destroy the Zerth so completely, what would stop them from doing the same to anyone else who dared cross them? But the humans themselves had no interest in further conquest. Their fleets began returning to human space, rebuilding, repairing, and honoring the memories of those lost. Colonies that had been neglected during the war received supplies, care, and the first human-built memorials for the dead. Humanity remembered every life, not as a number or statistic, but as a story, as a soul that had mattered. On Earth, memorials were constructed for Elysia and other lost colonies. Families gathered, lighting candles and sharing stories of loved ones. Children asked questions, wide-eyed and trembling, and parents answered honestly, telling them of loss, courage, and the power of patience turned into action. The stories became part of human history, a lesson passed from one generation to the next. Patience is strength, and justice may be slow, but it is inevitable when hearts are pure and minds are focused. Still, humans did not forget the cost of anger. They knew that in becoming instruments of destruction, they had crossed a line they had hoped never to approach. Commander Alara often stood alone on the observation deck, staring at the stars, wondering if the galaxy would ever understand that humans had not sought war, but had been forced into it. She whispered the names of the fallen under her breath. Elysia, Verdun, Kyros. Every name a promise, every promise fulfilled. The Zyrth were gone, but humanity carried the weight of their own actions. There was a lesson embedded deep in the memory of the stars. Kindness must be respected, patience must not be abused, and when humans are pushed too far, the results are absolute. And so the galaxy learned finally that there was a power in humans that no one could challenge lightly. They could forgive, they could endure, but they could also destroy with precision and resolve beyond imagination. It was a terrifying truth, but it was also a warning. For humanity, the war was over. For the galaxy, the lesson had just begun. And in every quiet moment across every star system touched by human influence, one truth echoed endlessly. Humans were not to be underestimated. Long after the last Zyrth world had been reduced to molten glass and ash, the galaxy remained silent. Systems that had once traded casually with the Zyrth now whispered in fear, and species that had mocked or underestimated humanity found themselves reconsidering every decision. Humans had shown restraint for centuries, had offered friendship and trade, had endured insults and attacks. But when their patience ended, their fury was absolute. The universe had seen it, and none would forget. Humanity did not celebrate their victory. On every ship, in every colony, there was quiet reflection. Survivors of the conflict walked through the ruins of their past, tending to the wounded, comforting the grieving, and rebuilding what could be rebuilt. They lit memorials for the millions who had died, spoke their names aloud, and told their stories so that they would never be forgotten. Humanity did not see itself as conquerors. They were caretakers of memory, keepers of justice. Commander Alara stood on the observation deck of the Aegis, gazing at the stars. She thought of Elysia, of the children who had laughed in the gardens, and the families who had lived in peace until it was stolen from them. She felt the weight of responsibility in every heartbeat. Humans had shown the galaxy their power, but she knew the cost. Power without reflection was dangerous, and humans had been forced into a choice they had hoped never to make. The galaxy, meanwhile, learned quickly. Alien empires who had once challenged humans with insults or petty attacks now approached with caution. Diplomats who had previously underestimated Earth now knelt before human leaders in respect. Stories of humanity's final strike against the Zyrth traveled across the stars like whispers of legend. Children of other species grew up, with tales of human patience and the unstoppable fury that followed when patience was broken. And yet humanity itself remembered humility. They had not sought war. They had not sought destruction. They had sought justice for those who could not fight for themselves. They had given the galaxy a lesson in both patience and resolve, and they carried the scars of that lesson silently, like a quiet vow. In human schools, children learned the stories of the Zyrth, not to celebrate death but to understand responsibility. They learned that kindness is precious, that peace must be protected, and that justice, when delayed but certain, can be the most powerful force in the universe. These lessons shaped the next generation of humans, instilling courage, wisdom, and the understanding that power must always be tempered with conscience. On distant planets, former Zyrth colonies were slowly reclaimed, not by vengeance, but by care. Humans rebuilt, nurtured, and protected. Forests regrew, cities rose anew, and life returned. The galaxy saw humans as builders and protectors, but also as an unyielding force, one who could create worlds and, if forced, erase them. And through all of it, humanity kept one memory alive: the day Elysia fell, the moment the Zyrth had awakened human wrath, and the truth that patience is not weakness. The galaxy had witnessed it, and it would never forget. For every species there was now a lesson carved into history. Kindness is precious, trust is sacred, and the last species that makes humans angry may not survive to see the stars again. Humanity had endured, had mourned, had calculated, and had acted with precision and purpose. They had shown what it truly meant to be human, capable of infinite compassion, but also capable of unstoppable fury when justice demanded it. The humans turned their eyes back to the stars, not with anger but with vigilance. The galaxy was vast, full of life and opportunity, and humanity had a duty to protect it, to guide it, and, when necessary, to defend it with the full measure of their strength. And so, the legacy of the Zirth faded into history, leaving only one truth for all to remember: the last species that made humans angry, they were eradicated completely, and humanity's patience and its power would never again be underestimated.